start with a brief introduction. I'll let you all take it away.
Oh, that is working. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for, again, for listening to me. I don't know, I think everybody was there at the dinner and heard me too much at the dinner, but I'm Mike McDermid, and I am the Director of Fisheries and Seafood with Oceanwise. My history and background and career really started with my passion for the ocean. As I mentioned before, I grew up in the area. Always been passionate about the ocean and the creatures in it. And I always think that, you know, I couldn't understand actually why people weren't interested in the oceans, because I could get a group of kids to dream up the most fantastical monster they could ever imagine. And I guarantee you, I can show you an animal in the ocean that is just like that. And it's fascinating. So at some point in my career, I made the decision I was going to be a doctor, because I thought that was the only way I could use biology to make a career. And at some point, I just decided, no, it's about the oceans and conservation and wanting to have an impact and make a difference. And my career led me to actually start here at the Vancouver Aquarium. Actually, that's not true. I started at the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, but then volunteered here and came and worked here for 10 years. Used to dive with the sharks. And then I lost my mind, and I left the aquarium, left Oceanwise, and became a fishmonger and opened a fish store and local fish store and market and restaurant in Vancouver. Sold that during the pandemic, that company, and had the opportunity to return to Oceanwise and do what I really love.
Hi, I'm Greg Twinney. I'm the CEO of GeneralFusion. For those of you who aren't familiar with fusion, I'll maybe give a little bit of description. The sun and stars are fusion. The process that the sun and stars and the universe has figured out for creating energy for billions of years past and probably billions of years forward is the most efficient way to create energy with no impact to the environment. We're fusing very light atoms together to create heavier atoms is a way to unlock energy potential that is not comparable. Imagine being able to power 5,000 homes with a couple of bottles of seawater for a year. So again, 5,000 homes, 1 year, a couple of bottles of seawater. If you take that seawater and you fuse the light atoms in there together, you unlock the amount of energy necessary to do that. We know the physics of doing that is possible because we see it every day when we look up at the sun and stars, we see fusion. The process of fusion has been demonstrated on Earth for decades. I'm the CEO of GeneralFusion. We're a leader in the world when it comes to commercializing fusion. We create a star inside of our machine every day, multiple times, right here in Vancouver. We're currently on the cusp of a breakthrough where we will be building a 50% power plant scale machine that's going to be generating fusion on a daily basis. That's going to happen right here in Vancouver in the next 24 months. We're a team of about 140 people. We've been around for 2 decades, and we have a set of investors that include people like Jeff Bezos, Tobias Lütke, big sovereign wealth funds out of Singapore and the Middle East. Hundreds of millions of dollars raised, 2 decades of work to get to this stage where Canada can break through as a global leader in energy at a scale that it will not be touched by any other nation. We are at the absolute cusp of something incredible. I'm very excited about this. Worked very hard with this team here in Vancouver. Looking forward to sharing a bit more about it over the next handful of minutes.
And how soon can I live in a house powered by stars?
Should I like Graeme?
Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah. Well, before you do your introduction, we're demonstrating this technology in the next couple of years at a larger scale. We've had many large test beds that we run fusion all the time. But in the mid-2030s, we'll have our first power plant putting energy out on the grid. And then it's all about scaling incredibly fast and doing that in partnerships around the world.
And it's expensive for you, but would it be reasonable for me, or would it be expensive for me to live in a house part?
With fusion, the unique benefit of it is the fuel source is seawater, very, very small amounts of seawater, as I described.
Yeah.
So zero cost of fuel, and also means that you can put fusion power plants virtually anywhere in the world. And there's a safety component as well, because there's no very, very little radioactive waste, for sort of similar to a hospital that works with medical isotopes. So being able to place energy anywhere with zero cost fuel and sort of abundance of fuel, it's really all about the capital cost of a power plant, and you sort of divide that over the number of years and amount of energy it puts out. Our target is to match the cost of coal, which is kind of the lowest cost base load energy and the dirtiest that we need to replace fast.
Yeah, totally.
So that's the target.
Cool. Graeme, sorry, take it away without further
So
ado.
excuse my language, but how the fuck do I follow that? That's like the most ridiculously cool thing ever. So my name's Graeme Edge. I'm originally from the north of Scotland. I live in Calgary. And I am the founder and CEO of something called Energy Disruptors, which was an idea I had on a flight coming back from Europe about 6 years ago. So this coincided with like an early midlife crisis. I was hating my career. I was recruiting oil and gas executives around the world, feeling a little bit disillusioned. And I got it in my head that I was going to try to create a forum that would really have a big impact on the future of energy. So I was on a flight from London back to Calgary, and I thought, what if we put in the same room oil and gas with renewables, people working on batteries, entrepreneurs, finance people, people from the arts and creative sectors. What if we collided this world of electrons and molecules and got these different groups starting to collaborate on major energy and climate solutions? And we did it in a way that would be engaging. We would have artistic performances and live music. So we took that idea, my wife and I cashed in our pensions and our RSPs and decided to self-fund that. And we did our first Energy Disruptors Summit in Calgary in May of 2018. That event is the fastest growing energy event in the world. We bring 3,000 leaders from around the world kind of reshaping energy to Calgary each year. And then outside of that, I have an executive search firm where I recruit executives for clean tech companies and companies like GeneralFusion globally.
I got to say, maybe if I can just pile on quickly to his bio. I've attended Energy Disruptors the last 2 years. I had the honor of being able to speak this year to a huge room full of people, and incredible event. Honestly, incredible event.
Thanks so much.
Off the charts. If you looking, I don't know when it is next year, probably around this time of year next year.
Late October next year.
Pull out your diaries.
It is a really amazing event. And if you want to walk away from a handful of days feeling super inspired and optimistic about the future, attend the event. It's pretty cool.
Thanks very much.
All right, so tell me, what is the next big bottleneck for all three of you? Like, that's what we want to know, right? We want to know the problems so that we can overcome them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I come at this from a very, very different perspective of fisheries science and seafood production. And I think that I really think that we've done a very good job. And one of the biggest challenges with conservation is trying to design initiatives or programs that meet the needs of all stakeholders and rights holders involved in the process. And that's always been the challenge. And I think that's one of the things, whether by clever design, but I can tell you it's mostly happy accident that we've come upon a solution within the sustainable seafood world, within the seafood world, I guess, that works at all different levels and is a positive benefit for all different levels. It's something that everybody can do in their everyday lives that will have a positive impact. So I think that part has been good. The part that's really the bottleneck, I think, for us now is the structure of global seafood production. And one of the things that is really challenging, there's a few, I guess, that are really challenging within seafood production. One is it's the most complicated of all of our food systems. So when we look at food systems, most land-based food systems change hands 2, maybe 3 times before they get to our plate. With seafood, it's on average, it's 5 or 6 times. So one of the challenges with that is it's difficult. It's like that game you used to play in kindergarten, the telephone game, where they pass the thing down the line. By the time it gets to the end, it's turned into something completely different. So oftentimes it's very difficult to know exactly where your seafood came from because the story's completely changed. It's now garbage at the end. So that's a challenge. But even bigger challenge is ultimately our growing need for healthy protein sources globally and growing populations. And what this means is that when you try and run, as we do, a markets transformation, a markets-based change, we're running up against these major companies that are always going to have a market for their product because there's always going to be demand for protein and healthy protein sources. So even if, as an example, even if we convince everybody in North America to not support these fisheries that we know are completely damaging to the ocean, they'll just flip and start selling in another country or another continent, another market. There will always be a market. So I think one of the things that, and I'm kind of hearing it here, and I love it because I think that's what needs to happen, is we need to start focusing on disrupting the market. And this is something that within the seafood industry, they don't want this disruption. I mean, right now what's happening is the fishers are getting less than 5% of the traded value of seafood. And most of the, because it's a commodity based, most of the value is just in it exchanging hands from processor to producer to broker to importer to exporter, and everybody in the middle is making a lot of money off the seafood, but the actual producers aren't. So we're working on systems now where we can break down those barriers, start supporting small, independent, local fishers, the ones that have a much more vested interest in being stewards of the local ecosystem, and being able to kind of find them fit for purpose markets and promote those within the markets as well. And we see these small, local, independent, community-based fisheries as a much more sustainable model for food security purposes and for the environment moving forward. And so that's what we're kind of fighting to do now.
And can you continue to scale doing that? Taking that approach?
Always the question.
Yes.
And being a nonprofit, a charitable nonprofit, funding is always a challenge.
Yeah.
However, this is really becoming a major focus globally with this fishery-reliant small communities. And we're seeing a lot of the large industrialized fisheries come into an area, clean it out of fish, and move on to the next area. But of course, the community there that's reliant on that can't just pick up and leave, but they're having to. So I think there's a lot more support for it now. I think there's some great stories in this. We just finished a project with northern communities in Nunavut, and working with these communities and what seafood, what Arctic char, which is their number one, what it means to them and their community, and how do we ensure that they can continue to support their communities for generations to come without us getting in the way or without, big companies coming in and taking that resource out. So I think scaling is always difficult, but I think there's a lot more attention in it, and
it's not everything. You don't always have to scale.
And it's about, I mean, to be honest with you, it's about innovating, as has
Right.
already been mentioned countless times, I'm sure here. It's about finding the tools necessary to be able to do things in a more cost-effective and time-effective manner, and that's what we've been kind of focused on the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe switch this around a bit. Let's try and get you guys involved in this. So how many of you care about energy? Put up your hands. I feel like there's a lot of people lying. Okay, so keep your hand up if you care about energy. And then put your other hand up if you care about climate. Oh, my experiment has totally failed because the whole room is basically doing this. So that's fantastic, because one of the things that we're trying to work on is we think about energy as like the platform business of the world. And what I mean by that is every other business relies on energy. So if you're a technology business, if you're making textiles, if you're producing food, we cannot do anything without energy. And we're not going to be able to solve climate change without making some really fundamental changes in terms of how we produce energy. And there's a number of things we can do, obviously, in order to tackle this. One is to decarbonize the existing energy system, which is obviously what folks like Greg and his team are working on. The other is to look at mitigation of, as we see an increasingly heating planet, how are we going to adapt to that? And that's a really controversial topic. The other thing we can do is how do we remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere? And then really the fourth method is something called geoengineering, which is getting a lot of attention right now, which is effectively, do we release pollution into the atmosphere to slow the warming effect? So this is the kind of stuff that we're really getting into at our event. And one of the previous panelists, it really struck a chord with me today when they were talking about how do we include everyone and a broad cross-section of society. And so a lot of the way that we design our summit and this initiative is about how do we bring diametrically opposed people together to actually have respectful conversations that are grounded in science and grounded in pragmatic solutions. So we're trying to break down these echo chambers to really progress these ideas and almost cover some of these really challenging taboo topics. So that's really the thing that myself and my team are super focused on.
I'd say you're doing a good job of that. I mean, the fact that at Energy Disruptors, a couple weeks ago, I was able to stand up on stage and talk about using fusion so that we can stop pulling oil out of the ground.
In Calgary, an oil and gas town.
In Calgary, in a room, and everyone gets it, right? People get it, but how do you bring them together? How do you create the alignment? I'm not trying to threaten. I'm talking about the reality of what we all need to do, and how do we work on this together. I also can't put fusion on the grid without the oil and gas companies helping in some way. That could be through capital now. It could be through partnerships, project capabilities, workforce. There's so many things that we need help with, and working together. And the connections between these different groups are incredibly important. And so, thinking about it in a sort of collective way is, I'd say, one of the barriers that I see for us as a company going forward is people not seeing us as a threat, but seeing us as a way to sort of enable their future as well.
Yeah, I really love that. And, I think that one other thing that we're also really interested in is we've seen this rise of climate catastrophism. So I'm sure there's lots of parents in this room, or you have nieces and nephews, and they're feeling, a lot of, I think, young people are feeling incredibly despondent and worried about the future. And I think one of the risks, and my God, have we beaten to death AI over the last 3 days? But a lot of my concern about AI is it going to further entrench us in our own silos and further kind of reinforce these very kind of binary black and white beliefs? And what does that mean for tackling major problems like this foundational kind of energy and climate challenge? So one of the things that we're really trying to do is engage and build an intergenerational audience and actually inspire hope in young people, but again, in a kind of pragmatic and realistic way. So one of the reasons why I'm here is, shamelessly, I'm trying to engage with other communities and people who are super creative, who aren't in this day-to-day world of energy and climate, because I believe that a lot of you have a very important part to play in this. We tend to beat to death engineering and technology solutions, And we tend to underplay the dynamic of change and social fabric and culture. And really, this is about how do we manage profound change as a society. And one of the quick things that we've learned as well is there's a lot of keyboard warriors, and when people are hiding behind their keyboards, they can say some pretty shitty things and disagree. But actually, when you get people in a room together, face to face, and you create an environment where people feel included and also people feel engaged and excited, you start to recognize that actually we share a lot more values than the things that we disagree on. And we're every year we do this, we're amazed by that kind of reaction.
Well, thank you very much. Well done, team.
Awesome. Thanks.